Darkness is one of the terrifying and unknown power known to man. Darkness is actually one covered by actually evil, by one of the unknowns. As today I bring you, what if Issei fell into his darkness?
This would take place after the peace treaty arc, as Issei would be actually in his room, dreaming about Rainer. Rainer was in Issei's dream, teasing and taunting him, asking him would he die for her. Issei would immediately wake up and realizing it was all a dream. He would look around to see it was actually Arcia and Reyes next to him. And from then on, everything was played the same. When Issei walks outside his house trying to go to school, the image of Rainer will be in his mind. He couldn't actually help but be afraid of her. Even though she was dead, she still lives inside Issei. It didn't help when actually Issei was actually at school, as he couldn't focus in class. The nightmares that he had of Rainer still actually echoes in his actually head, as actually the noise would actually just keep on getting stronger and stronger. The flapping of wings, the noise of the light spear that pierced Issei that night, that leaves a hole in his chest. Issei was terrified of actually her. He didn't want to say it, but he was truly afraid to be around women. When Issei was in the cloakroom, he tried his hardest to actually forget about her. Even with Reyes and the other girls right next to him, Reina was still in his mind. He couldn't actually help it. She actually did leave an emotional scar on Issei. While the group was talking about actually the trip that were going to take into the underworld, Issei was barely paying attention. Until actually Reyes actually calls him actually back, asking if he was alright. Issei lied, saying that he was fine, not wanting Reyes to find out about actually his nightmare with Reina. While on the train, going to the underworld, Issei was actually playing cards with Gaspar and Arcia. As actually Issei would pick up actually the Joker card, an image of Reina would appear on the card. Issei would drop his deck, and he would actually look closely to see it was just a regular Joker. Arcia asks if Issei was alright, and he also Gaspar. That was actually the first time that Issei jumped like that, like he was afraid of something. Issei apologized, saying that he was actually alright. The train would soon stop, and there actually the Grimmery would then actually greet Sona goodbye, as actually as they were about to leave, the train would just disappear, leaving all of them to fall out. Once on the bottom of the floor, they would actually hear rumbling that would actually wake Issei up. Issei would actually hear the voice of Reina in his head, asking would he die for her again. Issei would wake up to see that was a dragon, and Reina was right actually behind it. The image of actually Reina right there terrified Issei, and he stepped back up, like he was actually just preparing his sacred gear. The fight would play out quite differently in this, as Issei was less focused here, as actually he was just shooting his attacks randomly, not trying to actually properly actually find a weakness, or even find actually an opening to help the rest. Reyes and Azazel was watching from afar, and they noticed this here. The same thing would still happen, where the group would still end up losing to the dragon. Azazel will come in at the last second, telling actually Tawny to stop, that he already has a great field of actually vision, and actually where actually they need to work on. With this, Azazel would explain to the group how this was a training exercise, that he just wanted to actually gauge their strength and their flaws that they need to work on, and especially Issei. He was actually not focused in that battle. The group would head on to the hot springs, and there Issei would try to relax. The image of Reina left his mind, and he could just ease his moment, but he just wanted to know. He would actually ask Azazel, the Azazel who was sitting right next to him, ask about Reina. Azazel was quite actually concerned. Why was Issei actually asking about Reina? She did leave an emotional scar on him. Azazel does know about that, how Reina did kill Issei. So he wants to know why is Issei bringing this up after so long. With this, he would ask what was Reina like. Azazel would explain to Issei what Reina was like. She was pretty much actually on her own, a lone wolf of course, pretty much didn't listen to any order he actually gave out. Well, most of the time. She was pretty much always actually lingering actually beside of him. She seemed like she had a crush on him, but heck, Azazel was not even interested. Azazel asked if Issei was alright, as if Issei would tell Azazel about his actually nightmares of Reina. Azazel would actually tell Issei to actually just not bother about it. They're just only nightmares, they can't harm you, of course. With this, Issei would feel a sense of comfort just talking to Azazel about this. He would relax in the actually bath, and he would enjoy the rest of the hours. Once they made it to Rhea's actually house, the Grimmerys actually of the Parage of Rhea's would actually be greeted. There they will actually see Millicent and Lady Grimmery and Lord Grimmery. They will all have dinner together, as actually Lord Grimmery will ask Issei how was the house that he gave actually his family. Issei said that his family was actually already happy with the house, that they were trying to break in every single room. As Issei was eating his dinner, he felt something behind of him. He felt like a pair of wings were right behind of him. He would look back to see black angel wings that was actually right behind of him. Issei would actually be shocked, and Reyes would actually snap him into actually the real world. She would tell Issei if he was actually alright, that he was not really paying attention or not eating his food. Issei said that he was quite tired, that he was just gonna go into his room for now. He has a big day ahead of him training with Tawny. Once in his room, Issei would actually be talking to Dreg about all this. Dreg would say that he can help Issei with his actually somewhat nightmares to try to block it out. Issei would thank Dreg, and from then on, Issei would have a quite decent, nice nap. With this, the next morning would actually happen, and Issei would start his training with Tawny. As Issei was training with Tawny would actually launch an actually flame attack towards Issei. Issei was preparing to dodge, but Issei's mind thought the fire attack was a light spear. Issei would actually dodge a little bit actually quite late, as the fire attack would burn half of his clothes. Tawny noticed that Issei was not focusing here. That actually every time that he actually threw an attack, he would always be afraid and always hesitate here for some reason. As actually the training was over, Tawny asked Issei what was the problem. Issei told Tawny about actually his nightmares that he was having. Tawny told Issei that he was acting pretty much like a wimp, that a dragon has no fear, that he should actually conquer this actually inner actually like what demons that he's having, or inner illusions. They can't harm him, of course. He would actually tell Issei that he better be focusing on his training, because actually right now in his future battles, he'd be facing way more powerful enemies that he's ever fought before, so he better achieve his balance breaker. For the past 2 months was not easy for Issei. He didn't sleep at all, as to be honest, he didn't want to sleep. Issei would spend most of his time awake, because he felt a little bit more better if he was awake. While he was dreaming, he always thought of Reina. Reina always was right behind Issei. As actually she would launch in a light spear, she would whisper how pathetic he was, that how he should have died that night, how she should have lived, how he let Reyes kill her, his first love. Is this how he really treats a woman? This actually got under Issei's skin, as he couldn't actually focus. He was always up and about, training, which did improve actually Issei's actually physical actually appearance here, and his power. It did actually leave him quite actually mental, that pretty much he did quite change during the past 2 months. Issei got a little bit taller, of course, as his eyes did change to almost that of actually red. Sometimes here, when he was actually quite frightened or quite serious, sometimes it would change to red. But something did change. Issei managed to unlock something quite new with his sacred gear. During the 2 months, Issei would acquire something called the Black Flames. This flame was so much deadly, so chaotic, so unpredictable here. When Issei actually first unlocked it, it almost burned half of his actually arm right off, because it was actually so hot, and yet so deadly and chaotic. Dreg told him that if Issei wants to have total control over this power, he must train almost every single day to have decent control, have a proper mindset for it. But this flame, Issei just couldn't help but think about this flame as Reina, as black as actually Reina's wings, how black she was, the outfit that she was wearing. Everything about this flame reminds him of Reina. Even though Issei didn't get fully control over this flame during the 2 months, he did got some decent amount of control and how to use it. Once Issei returned to the Grimoire estate, he was greeted by the rest of Reyes' Parage, and Reyes was so happy to see Issei, and she would go in for a hug. Issei would see Reina right in front of him, and he would actually step backwards, pushing Reyes away. Reyes asked what was wrong. Issei said that there was nothing. He was actually quite stuttering all over his words. He was just saying that pretty much she caught him off guard. She would try to hug him again, and Issei would tell Reyes that he's not really in for hugging right now. He's quite tired, and he needs to actually get prepared for actually the meeting that they're about to have. Reyes was surprised by Issei's action. He was always willing just to actually be hugged by her. Why now? Why was he pushing her away? Maybe because of his training? Well, she doesn't blame him. He was training with a dragon, of course. With this, she will also get ready. Once Issei was in the bathroom, washing off the sweat that was on his face, looking into the mirror, he saw Reina right behind him. Issei would be shocked, and he would actually clench his fist, breaking the mirror just by punching it. The mirror would shatter, and with this, it would just disappear like it was smoke. Issei would be surprised. It was the black flame that appeared on his hands, and he heard voices in his head, saying,
"Juggernaut drive. Juggernaut drive."
Issei looked, and he was seeing in his actual reflection of the water that his eyes, they changed that of red. The meeting with actually the North faction would play out similar in the anime. Nothing really much would change here. The events with actually Konoko would still actually happen, and Issei would actually go after her. This is where they'll have actually their first encounter with Kuroka, and everything would play almost different here. Instead of Issei gaining a power up from Reyes, Issei would get a power up from his inner darkness. The darkness was calling out to Issei and saying to awaken his power, allow it to take control over him. Issei would try his best to suppress this voice that he was hearing. The voice of Reina would still echo in his head. Would you die for me? Would you die for me? It still echoed like it was actually a parasite. Issei's eyes shot out a blood red, and a crimson energy would surround him. Once the light turned down, they would see Issei in his balance breaker, with actually his red armor, and also his actually dragon wings, but there was something different. Black and red lightning that was actually somewhat crackling around his actually body. This was actually an unstable power that Issei was actually holding. This is where actually the fight will be more actually of a menace. Issei was actually trying his hardest to keep this power under control and not let it take control over him. Issei would actually have a hard time facing off against Kuroka, but also Issei's actually power gained actually the upper hand. Kuroka was having a hard time keeping up with Issei. Kuroka would send her senjutsu at actually the dragon. Issei would then roar as actually the senjutsu would disperse. Issei would charge right towards Kuroka, the black flame in his right hand. This is where Issei was about to deliver the final blow, but something brought him back. Something brought him back to reality. Issei would soon stop in his tracks, and there he would stop 1 inch in front of Kuroka. Behind her, the whole actually landscape would be destroyed, as this was actually more destructive than that actually shown in the anime. Kuroka and Biku would end up actually retreating, leaving actually the group there, but also a quite actually stunned Issei. He didn't know what actually got over him. He was preparing to kill Kuroka right then and there. It felt like something was calling out to him to end her existence, but he was brought back by an unknown voice that was telling him to stop. By 2, he didn't know what it was. Once after the group made it actually to the party, they would actually hear news that actually Loki came up and started actually attacking actually the place, but actually Juka would actually send actually Loki to a different dimension. of actually the underworld here. That they were already formulating a team to go deal with actually Loki. The team consists of actually Reyes Grimmery and her prod, Sona Tree, and also a Valkyrie called Ross Weiss.